Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your DevOps Enterprise co-hosts, Steve Brodie, CEO of Electric Cloud, and Gene Kim, author and researcher.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? What'd you think of day one? Yeah? What'd you guys think of the party last night? Good? All right, okay. So, did we get a clicker? We forgot the clicker.
Let me work on that.
Can we please advance to the next slide? I got it. So here's just some pictures from the party last night. I sure had a great time. It was great to get to meet some of the folks at the party. I know there were some after parties. I hope everyone had a great time, got to know some of your colleagues a little bit better. Tonight we're going to have a party over at the Exploratorium. It's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. If you haven't been, it's a phenomenal science museum. They've got some great exhibits. It's right on the bay, and it's just down the road, so a great place to go. So we'll have some pedicabs. We'll actually have people holding some signs out on the Embarcadero, so you can actually follow that to get over there, and there'll be some maps that we'll be handing out at the end of the day. So hope to see everyone at that event. Some housekeeping, again, just to repeat. Most of you have probably done this by now, but please download the app if you haven't. The session ratings are very important for us, as we mentioned yesterday, so please use the app to rate the session so we can get some feedback. Again, if you need to get access to the internet. Some great tweeting yesterday, so I encourage you to continue doing that on the hashtag DOES15. Would appreciate that. And again, the plenary sessions here are live streamed. All the talks are recorded, and again, I mentioned this yesterday, but all of the presentations will be made available to the participants. So I know when you get into the breakout sessions, there's 6 sessions going on in parallel. Sometimes it's hard to choose, but everything will be made available afterwards. And the DevOps forum guidance is available here. We started talking about that.
I just learned from Ali. So give us about 2 weeks, and we'll send out an email giving links to all the slides that we can and videos that we have permission to distribute. So 2 weeks.
All right. Party is, late breaking update. Party is at 6:30 tonight, so not 6 p.m. So the party is at 6:30, so note that. All right, and finally, again, we do encourage everyone to visit the sponsors in the exhibit hall. You have your passport. Please go down, visit the Platinum sponsors, and get a stamp. And the drawing will be held Wednesday at 1:15. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Gene. Gene.
Hey, thank you, Steve. I wanted to take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to maybe punctuate some of the things that we covered yesterday. The first one was about the deploys per day versus deploys per day per developer. So yesterday we had I had presented the key findings around the State of DevOps report that we did with Jez Humble, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, and Puppet Labs. And I had made the claim that there's this kind of mystery of why is it that Amazon and Etsy and other these exemplars, Google, have this ever-increasing number of deploys per day. And I had made the claim that it was because, if you ask the question, what changed in those organizations, the surprising answer is nothing, right? Nothing really changed except for the number of developers. And so this is actually one of the things that we actually tested in the 2015 State of DevOps Survey instrument. And what we found was just astonishing. I mean, this is actually one of my favorite, this is one of my biggest aha moments. It was just a thrill to be able to see this. So what we did is, on the y-axis, we plotted the deploy frequency, so it's logarithmic scale, and on the x-axis is the number of developers, right? And so what we found in low performers is as the number of developers grew, the deploys per day per developer went down. For the medium performers, the deploys per day per developer was constant, whereas on the high performers, the deploys per day per developer went up linearly. So it looks asymptotic, but it's actually linear because of logarithmic scale. So it really is this, beautiful evidence, that it is true, right? We have 3 distinct populations that all have different abilities to scale developer productivity. Am I making sense? Yeah, thumbs up. So I thought that was a super, super cool, and in my mind, this is just such a great example of theory building and theory testing that you can do through a survey instrument. So this is one of my favorite graphs now. The second thing I want to share was, so I'm hoping that, how many people here saw the Dr. Spear presentation yesterday? Fantastic. So I wanted to share with you kind of what I learned from him and how that translated into, I think, the work that we do. So Spear Dr. Spear shared 3 capabilities. First one is see problems as they occur, right? And he gave me a lot of examples of that. And I think how that manifests itself into the DevOps value stream is, this is where we see pervasive production telemetry that Scott Prue talked about. It's like what continuous integration, continuous testing. The goal is, we want the earliest feedback as early as we can so we can find problems. So I think that one was, I think more obvious. The second one is, swarm problems when they occur so that we can fix it, not only fix it, but create more knowledge. And so I think the equivalent here is like, whatever the equivalent of our virtual andon cord is, right? So the notion that we stop the continuous deployment pipeline when things go wrong, whether it's the build breaking, test breaking, deployments breaking, or a Sev1 incident, right? We don't just give it operations. We mobilize whoever it takes. We swarm the problem until it's created, right? So that we can fix it before the cause and effect relationships are lost. For me, the biggest aha moment was capability 3. This notion is, how do we turn local discoveries into global improvement? Right? So one of the things about dynamic learning organizations is there has to be some mechanism where local discoveries that are found in daily work can be propagated throughout the entire organization. And so for me, right, this was the biggest sort of like a blind spot for me. So the notion of high trust culture, blameless postmortems. But for me, I guess the aha moment was also the notion of single shared source code repos, right? The idea that, at Google, they have one single shared repo for every Google property that every developer has access to, and is statically linked. So there's only one version of each library allowed, right? As opposed to a friend of mine, in fact, Josh Corman from, who's now a Sonotype, he said, a friend of mine is at a large bank, and there are, of the 83 versions of Java struts, we are running 81 of them in production, right? So just imagine all the organizational drag that's created by having to support 81 versions, right, in production. So the notion of a single best known configuration that's has the collective experience of the entire organization, right? I think is a very powerful mechanism to turn local discovery into global improvement. And blameless postmortems, this notion that Randy Shaup, former Google director who spoke yesterday from the Google App Engine team, he said whenever something goes wrong with a site-wide property, one of the first places people look is in the post-incident reviews, right? Because it's probably one of the best chronicles of how we diagnosed problems in the past, and then how do we fix it? So, and then the fourth one was like leading by developing, and I think Dr. Spear had great examples yesterday. So these are the things that we're putting into the DevOps handbook, and just the kind of looking through all the practices through that lens and identifying gaps, like in capability 3, was I think was a big aha moment for me, and one of the reasons that that required more writing. So with that, I now have an announcement. Is Jason Cox in it? Well, no, doesn't matter, I can't see him anyway. So one of my favorite talks last year was Jason Cox, who told the story of Disney last year. And apparently there was some issue with some moratorium talks by Disney employees and managers. And so we had to cancel his presentation. We took him out of the schedule. But we learned yesterday or Sunday night that somehow he did his magic, and he was able to get permission and an exemption to speak. So the entire event staff was on fire trying to figure out how to make time for him. So we are going to be putting him into the schedule. He'll be speaking at 1:30 in Grand Ballroom B, and he'll be speaking specifically about how he fits into the org chart, his funding model, all these questions that I think many of us had after seeing the remarkable things that he's doing at Disney. So 1:30, Grand Ballroom B.
That's today.
And that's today. All right, I think that's my last slide.